Good morning, Husker fans. Welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson, and back with my co-host, as always, is Danny Gillette of thegreatcornholio.org and huskerbigred.com. Sorry, it's been a little Freudian slip there, but we are back here, you guys, after the Nebraska football spring game this week. And Danny, what were your thoughts, man, after getting to see Matt Rule and these guys out on the field for the first time?
Well, my first thought is how you're always nicely color coordinated for this podcast, and I can barely get out of bed. But my second thought in regards to this game is that, I think people were kind of expecting more out of the spring game, but to me, you saw exactly what you were going to get. You're not going to get, a bunch of complex things offensively, but one thing that really did stand out to me was the defense. It looked like they were swarming, and I really, really like this 3-3-5. It allows for players to be aggressive, and I thought the defense, I thought there were some really good things. And as the kids say, Francois Umamelian and Cam Lenhart are going to be a problem in the future.
Definitely. That was one of my big takeaways. Yeah, was those kind of the three defensive linemen from the
Yeah,
freshmen. Maverick Noonan had some plays in there
yeah.
too, but yeah, Princewell Umamalian was one of my probably most positive takeaways from the spring game. Just I felt like he had a chance to contribute this year, but man, he was off the charts on Saturday.
Yeah, I think he definitely has more than a chance to contribute this year.
Yep.
I think we could see him become really a staple of the defense, and I think seeing guys like Maverick Noonan and then Lenhart, I think it's a good sign when your freshman can come in and play right away. And a lot of people want to say, "Oh, the offensive line is bad; like they don't look good." I thought they did okay. I think these guys are just that damn good.
I agree, and another thing too is you have to, that second offensive line that, I'm trying to think of the red team. The red team with their
Yeah,
quarterback. That offensive line was not. I mean, there was a couple of like Liptoski was on there, but there was guys on there that aren't going to play a ton. So I mean, I didn't think it was. I thought it was exactly like you said. What you expect from a spring game. Spring games are going to be sloppy. Especially when you're installing a new offense. You have a new quarterback. Everybody's kind of working together for the
yeah,
first time. But even look down the road. I mean, Michigan has the same offense, the same quarterback, and their quarterback struggled. And the same with Ohio State. Their quarterback struggled for like it's like a preseason football game. You're not going to expect the offense to be dominating and going up and down the field. And I did think that they did some positive things, especially with Jeff Sims out there. And I agree with you. I actually liked the offensive line. I thought Bryce Benhurt did look a
yeah,
lot better than
yeah,
he did a year ago. I mean, not just like when I saw him standing. I mean, he actually looked like a dude. He looked like the guy that Nebraska recruited. I mean,
yeah,
he looked 6'8" and thin. Actually, I mean, not he looks big, but he looks like he could even add more weight to his frame. And I don't know if it was, taking the knee braces off or whatever, but he was like consistently on run blocking, getting to the second level. I'm not saying I watched every single block of his, but I did think he played really well. And I was actually really impressed too by Ben Scott. I mean, he had
yeah.
a pull on one play that was like NFL. You just don't see guys, centers especially pull and get out in front of guards. So I thought the offensive line was solid. Hopefully the injuries will work out okay. I mean, Corcoran, I'm kind of worried about that. Was there another injury too up front?
I want to say there was, but I forget who it is right now.
Okay.
Um, I'll look that up after the show. But yeah, no, I thought that the offensive line held their own, and that was something that was big for me, just because I wanted to see how they came out in this game and how they played, and you know I do have concerns beyond Jeff Sims and Casey Thompson about the quarterback depth. There's no doubt whatsoever that Heinrich Harburg is a great athlete, but I didn't really see a ton of throws. I saw a lot of runs, and Chubba Purdy, I thought he held his own, but to be completely honest, I thought he held his own in last year's spring game, and I want to see it on the field in a regular season game. So I'm a little worried about quarterback depth beyond Thompson and Sims, but I don't think with the play of the offensive line and the improved play of the line that will be too much of an issue this year. I think a lot of it was just the offensive line not playing well last year and not giving Thompson time. And from what I saw on Saturday, I don't think that will be a problem. I think that will be a good a good unit this year, and they just need to keep improving, and that goes for the entire team. People, and we wrote pieces about it because we're fans, and things like that. But people tend to overreact to the spring games, and I thought that everybody basically did what they needed to do, especially the running backs. We saw Ramir Johnson play a little bit. We saw Gabe Irvin, who I thought ran really hard, that kind of bruising running back type of style. I thought he played really well. We saw a little bit of AJ Allen. And, they said it on the broadcast. You have at least 3 running backs in the running back room that can go to another school and probably play right away. So that just speaks to the depth of the position. And, I think EJ Barthel is going to have a lot to work with at that positional unit, and I think he's going to do a good job with it. I mean, this is a guy that was able to recruit Saquon Barkley and Miles Sanders at Penn State, and so he knows what he's doing at the running back position, and I'm excited to see that positional unit too, especially if the offensive line continues to improve. Because you remember we even said last year we thought that the offensive line did a better job run blocking, so I'm hoping those 2 units, the offensive line and the running backs, will continue to play at a high level together. And I think, quite frankly, we're going to have an offensive coordinator that wants to run the football, so that will help as well.
Yeah, we saw, they gave the fullback to Bonner, the fullback on the first play that was the ode to Frank Solich. But it was interesting that they used Duranian Bonner on as kind of that fullback role, and he has embraced it. I do think that the running back room is going to be a strength. I'm hoping that nobody exits via the transfer portal there. I know where Nebraska's going to have some guys leaving, from some spots. That's one kind of area where it feels like maybe somebody could leave just because there's only so many mouths to feed. But I do
Yeah,
feel really good about the running game. To talk about quarterback for a minute, I was really impressed with Jeff Sims. I
I
thought
was too.
he looked like a starter. I thought he put some really good balls on the money, to Billy Kemp and Marcus Walsh. Just everybody, he made some really good throws. I don't think he ran as much as like we'll see him run
No.
during games. But one play that sticks out to me, is Cameron Leonard came through with basically a free rush, and not Casey, sorry, Jeff Sims just juked him out of his shoes. And I can't remember if it ended up being a completion or what have you. He might have even got sacked there on the play later by somebody else. But that just shows you the kind of ability that he has to keep plays alive. And I thought he threw the football better than I thought he was
Yeah.
going to, so that he exceeded my expectations, especially in that area.
The dart he threw to Nate Borkature, I believe it was really
Yeah.
impressive to me, because that was an
Hmm.
absolute seed, and he just threw it out of his hands and whipped it to Borkature for a nice big gain. And I think it's going to be interesting to see where he falls in this thing, because I think, I don't think he's a guy we have another quarterback, he's good for depth, blah blah blah, this, that, and the other thing. I think he's a very real starting quarterback. So I'll be curious to see how that race, shakes out, because, I truthfully, and I've said this before, I think Sims is a better fit for this offense. There was obviously some stuff that he needed to clean up. He underthrew a ball towards the back of the end zone to Marcus Washington, I believe it was. So it wasn't all perfect, but I was very impressed with the touch Jeff Sims had, and his arm strength in general, I think, is a little bit better than Thompson's.
And I know there was a lot of turnovers. I think that Jeff
Yeah,
Sims only had the one fumble
yeah,
potentially. So I mean, that obviously you need to clean those things up. But I'm not. A lot of that stuff was like miscommunication type things. One of them was actually one of the fumbles was a really good defensive play. I'm blanking right now who did it, but it was just a great hit on the football, and they kind of just stripped it
yeah.
out. But I just thought the defense made a lot of plays. And one thing that's, about this defense is I know there's a new coordinator, but a lot of these guys are back from last year. And I think that you kind of saw that. But some of the new additions, like I thought MJ Sherman played pretty
Yep.
well. It was interesting to me. I was going to make this point earlier, but, like with Leonard, being from the IMG, the cornerback from the IMG Academy, which there's no way I could pronounce his name.
Sincere Safula,
Yeah, I
I
mean
think.
he came in. That was pretty good. That was impressive. I'm impressed by that.
Yeah,
But he came in and had a great hit,
he did.
and wasn't a. So I think it's like when guys come from that program, like they're ready to ball, and so those two guys, I think, they are used to seeing this level of talent, and I am really happy to see those 3 defensive linemen, because the pass rush has been one of the things I've been worried about the most, and I feel better about the pass rush after seeing those guys on Saturday.
Gage Stenger had a nice hit as well. He came across the middle, absolutely laid the wood on the poor running back. I forget who it was, but no, and I really like this defense because you know the defenders can rush for all angles. When the ball was snapped, I saw people rushing from everywhere, from the defensive line coming down from more the linebacker spot, so to speak. And, I really like the chaos that the defense creates. And chaos is a word we had heard all spring, and we saw it a little bit on Saturday. So I'm interested to see, how that plays out. People are a little bit worried about, defending the run, but I think we'll be okay. I mean, I think Leonard and I'm blanking right now. Leonard and what's his name? Yeah,
Princewell.
Princewill. I think they'll do fine defending the run, and Princewell is just a man among boys. I mean, man, like he was very impressive, and when you recruit, you want players that can play right away. They have two in Leonard and Princewell.
Yeah, definitely. And I do think Maverick Noonan's going to get some snaps there this fall too. He flashed some stuff too, and all three of those guys were playing with the number one defense because they had it set up to I mean it wasn't always there was some guys switching around a little bit, but yeah, I liked how they had it set up. I thought it was a good formula. There was a lot of fans there, so I thought it was a great spring game. It was funny they had the Minnesota one watching on TV, and the Minnesota spring game just looked like absolute garbage in like an indoor practice facility, and it was just like I don't know, man. It's just not what you'd think of. Maybe it was so cold or something that they had to do it inside, but I hate Minnesota. I think it's a barren hellscape, the entire state. But anyways.
I feel that way about New Jersey, so any New Jerseyans, please feel free to come after me in the comments because I don't care. But anyway, no, and it was rainy and cold in Nebraska, and yet 66,000 people showed up. So, I think there was a lot of intrigue. Obviously Frank coming back and getting the new locker room named after him in the new facility, and then you had the new Herbie. That was
I
pretty
love
cool
the new
too. I
Herb.
like
I
the
love
new
the new
Herbie. Yeah,
Herbie. Yeah,
I
he's
love the new
cool.
Herbie.
Yeah.
I think he's a throwback to, what used to be. And while we don't necessarily like that for the direction of the program, meaning what used to be, I think this one we can accept. It was a very good fit. And who else is going to be a good fit is Willis McGahee. He committed his son, the son of the Miami running back, Willis McGahee, committed on Saturday, and I'm very excited about him. He's a very impactful defender, good pass rusher, tremendous athleticism, and I'm excited to see what he can do in this defense.
Yeah, I really like this commitment for Nebraska. I think this is my favorite commitment of the 2024 class so far. And I really think that McGahee's underrated. I mean, he's like, I can't remember what he is in the composite, like 400. Like he's a 3-star, but 24/7 Sports in their own rankings has him like 232. And I think he's a top 200 caliber of player. I think part of the reason is, he's listed at 6'1" and 220, and his profile says they don't have, they don't know exactly what the size is on him. And so I know he doesn't fit into exactly the measurables that he's not like 6'3", 240 or whatever that you want for an edge rusher. But I think for this 3-3-5, I think he's going to be a perfect fit. He can play some outside linebacker, but I mean, this dude can get after the quarterback. He had
Yeah,
double-digit sacks last year. He's
13.
explosive. Yeah, and I think he's just going to be absolutely perfect for the that jack. They call it the jack edge rusher, whatever you want to call it. Like this guy can get after the passer, and I think he's going to make a pretty early impact at Nebraska. I honestly do.
I definitely do as well because he fits that kind of athletic type of mold that you need in a 3-3-5 defense, and I think he'll be able to, you know, get after the quarterback with his speed. We're also trying to line up an interview with him at some point this week, so I'll get back to him at some point later in the week, and maybe we'll get a chance to ask him some questions. But I think it's kind of interesting because it wasn't like he just committed out of the blue. Nebraska just contacted him. He was at the very first spring practice, if I remember correctly, back in March. So this is somebody that Nebraska has had their eyes on for a long time in the recruiting world, like the last month or so. And Philip Simpson was a part of the recruitment, and When Matt Rule, hired, guys like Simpson, focused on, getting coaches and staffers from Texas, I mean, you could sense there was a recruiting strategy, and, Simpson playing a role in McGahee's recruitment is just proof of that. And, I'm really excited to see what, McGahee can do, and I think he's going to be a really good fit in this defense.
Yeah, a perfect fit in this defense. I really think that when you look at that, plus just the type of athlete that he is, he's got the bloodlines and the production. I mean, he's got it all there. He's a really strong athlete. So yeah, it's just this is a perfect kind of Matt Rule addition, and yeah, I think within a few years we're going to look at this guy and be like, how was he a composite 3-star? So that's my opinion. I could be wrong, but hopefully I'm not. From a Nebraska, you know perspective. Overall, though, just to there's a couple. I want to wrap up the spring game a little bit, later, just talk about some of the other guys that stood out. But from a recruiting perspective, there was ended up being 24 guys on campus. Brandon Baker, the number one tackle. Carter Nelson was there. They got some other in-state guys there. What stood out to you from a recruiting perspective this weekend beyond McGahee?
Brandon Baker actually, showing up at Nebraska and being there because he's a guy that I really, really want. I think, he's a fantastic offensive lineman. He's physical. He's everything that, you want. And he's a type of guy that you can, build an offensive line around. And, I think having 24 guys at the spring game, despite the weather, they all want to see what this program is about. And I think more are starting to realize that this program, you know, is in a good position to do big things. And I don't want to get too over the top, but I just have this sense that you know uh, Dominic Raiola said this program was a sleeping giant, and I get that sense as well. I really do. Between what we have now in our recruiting efforts for 2024 and beyond, I think this program is headed in the right direction. I mean, we landed a 2025 commit on Thursday in Caden Vermas. So, I mean, that just goes back to the staff, committing to the state of Nebraska and, trying to get as many players in state as possible.
Yeah, and I thought it was Brandon Baker was good, and he's talking about an official visit. I know there's a lot of heavy hitters involved, but Nebraska's definitely made a positive impression. He brought his teammate Aiden Breland, a top 100 D lineman from Mater D. I mean, so if you get guys from Mater D and you're on your visit list, I mean that's a big deal
Yeah.
because that program is as good as any in the country. I mean, for the most part.
Nate Frazier,
Um,
too, I mean, from Mater D. So that's something
yep.
to watch as well.
And Carter Nelson, I thought he was all smiles, so I think Nebraska probably made some headway there. He doesn't really talk about his recruitment much, so it's hard to gauge where things stand. I know he visited a bunch of SEC schools, but just because guys are kind of taking those visits, I mean, I want to see where he takes official visits, and I think that will give us a better idea of who's actually really in the mix here. Because I know that Notre Dame was thrown out there as a contender. I definitely think Nebraska's a viable contender, and then probably Georgia and Alabama, but you just don't know until he starts to kind of signal that either through a cut list or his visits or whatever. But it was still a good sign, I think, to keep getting him on campus. And with the way things are going with Dylan Raiola, he's kind of the number one guy, on the board right now, I think.
I've given up on Rayola at this
Yeah, me
point.
too. I did too.
Like it's just time to move on. And I think Nebraska, does have other options at quarterback. But if we can get the playmakers to surround a quarterback, then I'm not too worried. And I think there are going to be playmakers on this team for quite some time, both on the roster now and in the future. But I'm interested to see what they do in terms of getting a quarterback. Dante Reno was talked about as a potential option before. Guys like that. So although I'm bummed about probably not getting Dylan Raiola, I mean I fully expected it, and I'm excited to see who else they add for this class and beyond.
Yeah, it is disappointing to, just because I really like Daniel Kalen. So, I mean, the way it all worked out, it's like Nebraska missed on two quarterbacks because they went after Yoler, which was the right move. I'm not saying that wasn't the right move. It's just makes it sting even more because the guy that, you felt like could have been kind of a fallback, and not just because, he would have been a really good player. I think he is going to be a good player at Missouri. I would still, try to see if I could get in on that recruitment, but it might be, too little, too late there. However, just I thought it was another solid weekend for Nebraska. They need to get some of these guys back for official visits, but I like how the 2024 class is, progressing. And I did have some thoughts, I guess, on quarterback. I know you kind of touched on it a little bit on one of your Twitter threads yesterday. But what's going to happen with this quarterback position, going forward? Because Harburg did, he ran the ball okay, but yeah, he missed some throws, and he definitely needs a lot of development before I think he's ready to start, Big Ten games. I mean, the way I look at this quarterback room right now, if they lose Casey Thompson, then we're one injury away from basically where we were last year, which is not having a Big Ten caliber quarterback, starting games.
Although I do say I feel a lot better with Jeff Sims under center than I do Trevor Purdy, but that's like saying like
Right. Well, what I'm saying is so if Casey transfers and then
gotcha,
Jeff's our
gotcha,
quarterback, and
gotcha.
if he gets hurt, then we're screwed again. If Casey's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
here.
yeah. Gotcha. Yeah, no, I agree. So what's the deal with, because I was talking about this last night as well, and I got mixed reviews from everybody. He can Casey Thompson could potentially transfer based off of a hardship exemption. Is that correct?
Oh, well, I think just because he's a graduate, I think he'd be able to
Just a
get
grad.
he'd be able to yeah, because once the rules are different for graduates. So I believe even if you've transferred before, if you're transferring as a graduate, I think you can still get that free year. So and now I could be wrong, but I think he came to Nebraska and I think he graduated at Nebraska. And I think he's going for a second degree.
He did
Like,
graduate at Nebraska. Yeah.
so I think that is why he would be able to get basically a free year to play wherever he transferred. I'm not 100% sure. I mean, that's the rules are so weird and they've just changed them recently. But I'm pretty sure he would get he wouldn't even need to apply for a waiver. If he did have to apply for a waiver, I feel like it would get granted. So, especially with the new coach and all that type of stuff. Even though I know they did just change the rules that they said they weren't going to do that type of thing, but it's the NCAA, so their rules don't mean shit.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, but yeah, I don't know. I just think there's a very real quarterback competition here, and while Casey will probably start, it's not clear cut anymore, in my opinion.
See, I think it's the other way. I think Jeff Sims is I think right now, if they were to put together a depth chart, I mean, they probably, I don't know, maybe they would put them both at the top just for now, just to because if you're Matt Rule, I mean, you have to try to keep Casey Thompson on this roster till the fall. I mean, till the season starts. That's just the bottom line of it. And I know that's where it all kind of converges, right? Because the best interest of Nebraska is maybe not the best interest of Casey Thompson, right? Because he wants to play this year to showcase himself for the NFL or whatever. And Nebraska, while they don't want him to play, it's like they just want him on the roster because they need two quality quarterbacks, and if they don't have him, they don't have that. So I mean, that's where the whole transfer portal thing kind of gets interesting because it's like, well, what happened? I mean, Casey Thompson could go through fall camp, and this happened before in Scott Frost's first year. I forget the quarterback, but he lost to Adrian Martinez, and then boom, hit the portal, and
Tristan
then
Jibba,
yeah, and then Adrian got hurt, and they were starting to walk on. So I mean,
who is
if they,
still playing at Ohio State, actually.
yeah.
He was in their spring game the other day for his 58th year of college football, so I thought that was pretty funny.
So that'll be interesting to see how that works out. Hopefully they can keep both of those guys here. I mean, I do think it's going to be a real battle, and it's hard to give the job, I guess, to Jeff Sims without seeing Casey throw a pass. You know what I mean? Because I do think that um, I think he at least gets this offense, and I do think he's a pretty talented passer. But Jeff Sims just looks like the total package to me. So I don't know. It's a tough call, but if Nebraska has both of them on the roster in the fall, then either way, I feel much better about the quarterback room than I did a year ago.
Yeah, I don't think Thompson will, transfer anytime soon. Maybe once the season starts or something. But Casey, I don't think would have come back if there wasn't some sort of guarantee, and I don't even want to say guarantee, but you know, line of thinking that he would be the starter. So it's going to be really interesting because I've said before, and I said this I think in December, that Jeff Sims is going to be a better fit for this offense, and I think Thompson is a pretty good quarterback, but I don't know if he's the best fit because with this offense, you're going to need to be able to run if you're a quarterback. So, and I think that's where Sims has the advantage, and I think he has a little bit more of an arm strength advantage. So, we'll see. It's going to be interesting to watch, and also just interesting to see how a guy like Heinrich Harburg fits into things because although he didn't necessarily throw the football a ton on Saturday, he showed he had the wheels. So, there's no doubt he's a good athlete. It's just about, being able to, put everything together that makes a good quarterback.
Yeah, fine too. Yeah, I'm not ready to throw the towel in on Harburg. I still think he could be developed into a potential starter. I don't know that he's there yet, but yeah, he does bring some other things, to the table at least, which I think is, pretty positive overall. But yeah, it's one thing I should say, to make so I don't sound like an idiot is that, you can't now that they have these transfer windows. I mean, Casey wouldn't be able to enter the transfer window, but he basically could just be like, I'm not going to play this year and I'm going to enter the transfer portal after the season. I mean, I don't know that like he would have, I just don't see him doing that. Like, I mean, that he'd have to be sitting and waiting for like another season to play college football. I mean, he's already really old. So I feel like, I mean, just I mean, I think
No,
he's,
yeah, I get
isn't he
you.
like 24? I
Yeah, he
mean,
is.
so it's like at some point you got to move on, and so I just can't see him like trying to wait and play college football in 2024. I just don't see that happening
I
because
don't either.
how's that? I mean, if you don't have a pro future, maybe you just take one more NIL deal and do the best you can, and then
Like Adrian Martinez, for example. Like on
yeah.
a now he's in the USFL, so I guess he
Is
is
he actually
somewhat in the
playing in the
pros.
USFL? I was curious about that. I
He
saw
got
he got drafted, but
I
I don't know that
I
he's
saw he
actually on
got
a
drafted.
roster.
Hold on, let me check that real quick. But yeah, I mean, it's a tough situation for Casey because you came back to Nebraska, thinking you had a really good chance to start, but now, Jeff Sims comes in and does a pretty good job, and we'll see what happens. And the other thing, not related to really Casey Thompson here, but we have to cut down the roster, and I think a lot of conversations are going to be had this week. So
Yep.
I'll be interested to see who stays and who goes. I could see one of the quarterbacks maybe going, somebody like a Richard Torres, or just there's a lot of names in that room. And I mean, did we see Logan Smothers on Saturday or no? I don't recall.
He's been hurt. He hasn't basically participated all spring.
Okay, yeah.
So I mean,
So
he's another one. But yeah, I would think quarterback, maybe running back, maybe receivers. Secondary. There's a lot of safeties and cornerbacks that have kind of not really gotten a lot of like Noah Pola Gates. Some of those get some guys
yeah,
like that. You know what I mean? That are talented players. It just works out. We'll see how many of those guys transfer and how many take the option to stay at Nebraska and just get their tuition paid for, because that's the other option. Basically, you have the coaching staff can go to a player and be like, hey, you can essentially you're not part of our plans here, so you can either stay here and basically not be on the team but still have your scholarship honored in the sense that your tuitions and board and all your expenses are paid for, or you can hit the transfer portal and go somewhere else. So I think between I almost want to say it'll be probably like half and half, because some guys just I don't know how much interest there's going to be in the transfer portal if they leave Nebraska. So we'll see how that goes.
and I'd take my tuition being paid for. That's for sure. I would definitely go that route. But
Especially if you're close to getting done with the degree, I
yeah,
mean, I
yeah.
get wanting to play football though too, so every situation is different for every player, but that'll definitely be something to watch over the next few weeks. And we've been, talking about a few transfer portal guys here or there. Bear Alexander went to USC. Taiwan Malone from Ole Miss. I think Nebraska has to cut down some guys. I think they would add maybe a player or two if it was the right situation, but it's kind of tough with the roster, scholarship numbers the way they are.
Yeah, right now it's about trimming the proverbial fat, so to speak. And, I think based on what we saw Saturday, I think this defensive line might be okay.
Yeah, I feel really good. Yeah, about the D line, for sure. So, yeah, and we'll have some more stuff up on the the spring game this week, and kind of reviewing all of spring ball at HuskerBigRed.com. But I wanted to just switch focus a little bit before we kind of wrap things up on basketball. It was another big weekend for visits there. Hunter Salis, the former five-star guard, was on campus this weekend. Josiah Leak, who his sister plays for the volleyball team. He was at New Mexico last year. 6'8" power forward. He visited. On some bad news, Latrell Wrightsell, who was visiting, he's committed to Alabama. Javian McCollum committed to Oklahoma. So Nebraska really doesn't have a point guard on the board. So it seems like they're going to have to, kind of basically start over, or hopefully Fred has some backup options in mind, because I don't think Hunter Salas can play point guard, and I don't want to see them force Jamarcus Lawrence into being a point guard. I think he's just more of a combo guard.
And when you look at this offense, and specifically last year, Sam Greasel added a lot of scoring, but he didn't really need to do that in order to be successful on his team. He needed to be a playmaker and a facilitator. And I do think they have guys that can put the ball in the hoop this year. So if they were just able to get a pass first kind of you know conductor, so to speak, of the offense, then I think that would serve them well. I mean, it was disappointing to see Latrell go to Alabama, but I mean, it's Alabama. They're one of the hottest programs in college basketball right now, so I'm not surprised. But those did sting, and I'm still pretty happy with the transfer portal haul that Nebraska was able to get. I mean, they've had a lot of good momentum this month, despite some targets not going their way. So I am excited about the future direction of the program, and you know I'm curious to see what Fred will be able to do with the new additions and what is going to be a big year for him.
It'll be interesting to see if they can get Salas. I've really wanted him, just because that would give him the defensive stopper, and then they would need a point guard. But Ali, I really like him too. I think I might have put him on my original 5 guys of like transfers Nebraska should target, because he's 6'8". I mean, he averaged like 7 rebounds a game, but his career field goal percentage from 2 points is like 62%. I mean, last year, I think he was at 64.6%. So, I mean, that's kind of, what Derek Walker used to do. He's got assists, he could rebound. I just think that you need more than one big that can score down low in the Big Ten, and this would give him another guy. Plus, it would give him, the ability to play big a little bit more, like if they're playing a team that's got like a couple of 7-footers or 6'10" guys, you're, instead of forcing Juwan Gary or Brian Bach into the lineup, you could have him, and it gives you another proven scorer, and it takes a little pressure off Brian Bach to kind of, develop into that next step this year.
Which, in my opinion, we don't know what that next step is for Breidenbach, because he showed at the end of the season that maybe he could shoot a little bit. He's not exactly the best rebounder, but he has the size to play inside. So his game is really confusing, and I kind of wish he kind of had a defined game at this point, just so we kind of knew what we were working with. But I think he needs to have a big year next year and kind of figure out what can I do on this basketball court that helps out the team? Is it passing the basketball? Is it going inside and drawing fouls? Is it shooting, from distance? I think we saw a little bit of everything last year, and I think at this point in his basketball career, I'm not sure that's the best thing for him.
It's funny because he is one of the highest rated Nebraska basketball recruits of all time. I think, he did get hurt his freshman year, and he did have some stretches last year. He had like a 6-game stretch last year where he averaged like 9 points a game and really figured it out. And then, of course, he just, he hasn't been consistent. So I think this offseason is going to be huge for him. He's going to be healthy. He doesn't have that kind of excuse anymore. And if he can't find not even a starting role, but a solidified spot in the top 8, I mean, that's not going to be a good sign for his career going forward. So yeah, it's a pivotal offseason, because there's a lot of, you look at this front court, there's a lot of potential minutes, and you've got one of the highest rated recruits of all time in program history, and they're recruiting other bigs. I mean, that tells you a lot right there about what they think about him, or at least that I think that they aren't going to, just assume that he's going to be able to step up his production. I think that they still think it's there, but you can't count on it at this point. He's kind of an X factor on this roster right now. And frankly, if they did get a league, it would not shock me if he entered the transfer portal.
No, it wouldn't shock me at all. But health is another big reason too. Like you just kind of
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, it seems like he's been bitten by the injury bug, and that's no fault of his own. We can't really bash a guy for getting injured. I mean, it's not like he's planning to get injured, but they say the best ability is availability. So, that it's going to be a crucial year for Breidenbach next year, and I'll be interested to see, what role he has on this team and, how Nebraska addresses the big position.
Yeah, and we'll have to see this week. What point guard. I'm going to try to dig into some point guards and see if there's some solid fits out there. I think Fred will find a way. I mean, roster construction hasn't necessarily been his issue, so I feel like he'll get some talented guys there. At least somebody who can play that lead guard role. It's not going to be Javian McCollum would have been a great fit, but it is what it is. You just have to move on. So yeah, but I still think they've made some solid additions, and we'll see. It sounds like according to Husker Online, that there's going to be both of those guys are kind of be making decisions in the next week or so. So hopefully we will have a better idea of what this roster is going to look like, and hopefully we'll get a decision from Keisei Tominaga here in the next couple of weeks. Still haven't heard anything from him.
I hope so too, because if he doesn't come back, then I'm a little worried.
Yeah, it would be so fun to have, the K-Say show for like a full season. I mean, we didn't really get it last year because he wasn't like he became a starter at the second half of the year. So it's like I will feel robbed of that experience if he's not back for a full year. I'll admit that.
That's the other thing. Fred gets all this talent and then he doesn't know what to do with it. So it's like, all right, like cool. We have a 5-star, recruit sitting on the bench and Fred's not playing him until an injury happens. That's basically what happened with Lawrence. Not that Lawrence was a 5-star recruit, but it took injuries for him to kind of really break out. And it's like, all right, like what are we doing here, Fred? But that's been the mystery to me. It's like Fred's gotten a lot of talent coming in. I mean, you just mentioned Breidenbach, one of the highest rated recruits in Nebraska basketball history, and he just really hasn't fit here. So, I mean, you can get all the talent in the world, but if you don't know what to do with it, then it does you no good. So, but
Yeah, you
anyway,
you got to make the puzzle pieces fit together, and that's the thing with the basketball roster too is you need complementary pieces. It doesn't do you any good to have five Bryce McGowans, for instance. Like you need to have
yeah,
guys that you got to have guys that can score in the post and can handle the ball and can shoot you need all those different pieces to fit together. So we'll see. I do like how this construction's going, but please just Casey, give us one more year, man. Come on, if you're watching this podcast, which I'm sure you're probably not, but I want to see in the Scarlet and Cream for one more season.
that being said, if we had 5 Bryce McGowans, I would be absolutely stoked.
Well, true, yeah. I mean, he's like, which he was on campus. He toured around Hunter Salis this weekend, so I thought that was cool.
We would give up
But
like 200 points, but we would score like 600, so it
oh
wouldn't
man,
even matter.
he was so good. He was fun to watch for sure. I wish we had him. If we had him this year, we definitely would have made the NCAA tournament. Like in my opinion.
But you know what? I think he made, and I wasn't sure about this at the time, but I think he made the right decision to go to the NBA. I really do.
Yeah. And see, that's where it's like I'm not saying it was a mistake to recruit a guy like Bryce McGowan's, but you have to be careful because, on a certain team, if you're on a certain team, and you're trying to add that type of player, it doesn't always fit. You know what I mean? Like Michigan's had a lot of those types of players, but they haven't won a lot. So it's because it's like teams that win in college basketball are veterans. And it's like Bryce McGowan's, yeah, this year he would have been a spectacular college basketball player. And last year he was a spectacular scorer, but as an all-around player, it's just that freshman year, it's hard to, expect those guys to make huge impacts, especially with the transfer portal. It's just with all the good players going to the NBA early, college basketball is such an old game that it's hard for those freshmen to make an impact. Even the good ones. Look at this year, not very many five-star freshmen did anything.
Yeah. And, it just speaks to, like you said, the transfer portal and then, how the coaches, utilize and develop those minutes. It's not like a football field where you can have, like, I don't know, 75 guys and, you can rotate them here or rotate them there. There's not as much good depth, I think, in the basketball, sphere as there is in the football sphere. So, but I'm just thinking Bryce McGowan's on this year's team, him driving in the lane and then kicking it out to Tominaga, or tons of scenarios where I think he would have been great on this year's team. But I think like you said, with the commitment that we landed the other day, and I'm blanking on the name again because it's early, but
Jakowski.
yeah, I remember talking off air with you, and you said, he's a good player, but he's not good enough to where he would be a one and done. He's somebody that can develop into a solid Big Ten player, and I think that's exactly what Nebraska basketball needs. I think while the high rated and high scoring, high volume high whatever players are really good and can help you win games. What Fred needs, especially this year, and hopefully for his sake, a couple of years down the road, is players that you can develop and count on and build a program around. Build a
Mhm.
program around because Fred's never really built the program. He's kind of always, since he's been here, filled it with a lot of transfers and things like that. And I would love to see some continuity within the program. I think we're going to see it next year, but it's going to be the first year, in my opinion, of his coaching tenure that we've really had pieces that we can build around and that will stay.
Yeah, and Fred's always been. I mean, even when he was at Iowa State, I mean, he's always been a transfer portal guy. So he's always got talented guys to these Midwestern schools. It'll be interesting to see how that all comes together. But I do feel good about. I feel this program is trending in the right direction. So I'm as excited about Nebraska basketball, at least right now, going into next season, as I have been in a long time. Basically, since Fred got hired. So I feel good about that. I did want to mention before we wrap it up, guys, do make sure that, you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of our content. We're going to hopefully have some great player interviews and lots of analysis going forward on all things Husker sports. Hit the like button, get into the comment section. I did want to mention it is a tough weekend for the Nebraska baseball team. Got swept by those bastards, the Iowa Hawkeyes. Really hurt us because Nebraska was tied for first in the Big Ten. Now they're not out of the race. They're still kind of right in the mix in terms of winning percentage, but definitely a missed opportunity this weekend. So we'll see how that goes. But it's just life as a Nebraska fan, I guess.
This team has been way up and down, and not to go off on another whole show here, but do you think this hot seat is getting warm for Will Bolt?
We'll see. I think I guess we'll see by the end of the season, but I still think this program is going to be, in the mix for an NCAA berth. But yeah, if they don't get there this year, then I think it's going to be. I wouldn't say he'd get fired this year, but he's going to be in the Hoiberg kind of Scott Frost area pretty soon.
I was just gonna say I do not envy Trev Alberts. He has had to come in and clean up so much mess, and I don't envy him at all. This is a tough job. Thanks, Bill Moose. Go have another Bush Light or whatever. And I don't envy the job at all. I really don't. He's had a lot of tough decisions to make, and I think at some point it will be sort of a relief when Trev has his own coaches under his own regime. But I'm hoping, Fred can get it together, Bolt can get it together, and we'll see about Matt Rule. But I am encouraged by Saturday, and I can't believe. Let's see, we're April 24th right now. Let's see, our first game is what, August 30th.
I think so. Yeah.
Oh, we're getting there. We're getting there. It's coming up quick. So
It is, and I'm hoping with baseball, it's just one of those, blips. And they'll flip it around, but I still think they've got as good a shot as anybody. I don't know that the Big Ten's going to get any at-large teams in, so it might just be, whoever. It might be the regular season champ and the tournament champ getting in. I think that's what it was last year. So I still have hope, and I do think overall it's a good time to be a Nebraska fan with Trev Alberts in charge. So, with that in mind, make sure you guys hit the subscribe button. Check out HuskerBigRed.com. We're going to have a ton of great content here over the next few weeks, and we'll be back with another episode later on this week. So, as always, guys, go Big Red.
go Big Red.